The United States is threatening India with sanctions, all as the globalist order crumbles. In this video, we're going to take a look at the latest threat against India coming out of D.C. We're going to see why the Bumblin Biden regime is targeting India, and stick to the very end of this video when I'll reveal why such threats against India are only revealing nothing less than the end of the globalist order as we've known it. You are not going to want to miss this. Greetings, everyone. Dr. Steve here with you. Great to be with you. As always, I'm your daily fake news antidote, so come on into the Patriot Professor's Den, where I'll help you to think better so you can feel better in these crazy and turbulent times. If ever done so, you know what to do. Make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. Before we begin, gang, guess who else is going to be joining me on Saturday at my awesome rhino hunting boot camp? The woman running against Dr. Oz for U.S. Senate, that's who, Kathy Barnett. She's in the process of taking down one of the biggest rhinos out there, and I'm proud to have her at our event. We still have a few spots left for our rhino hunting boot camp on Saturday, March 5th, so make sure to click on that link below or go to rhinohuntingbootcamp.com to learn more about how to get patriots in office in 2022. Tickets are discounted up to 90% off through tomorrow night. Sign up now at rhinohuntingbootcamp.com or just click on that link below to learn more. All right, gang, let's dive right in here. One of the themes that we've been covering on this channel now for the last week is just how much the liberal globalist order appears to be fracturing right before our very eyes. Now, this fracture first appeared with the massive sanctions levied on a number of Russian banks that have been expelled from what's known as the SWIFT financial exchange. If you don't know, SWIFT stands for this very cumbersome phrase, the Society of Worldwide Interbanking Financial Telecommunication. I think I got it all in there. But it's an internationally interconnected platform that basically governs all worldwide financial transactions. Now, the key to get here is that SWIFT, being the default international financial transaction platform, SWIFT is not merely a part of economic globalism. SWIFT is economic globalism. SWIFT is the platform by which all financial institutions of the world are interconnected, and it guarantees, as you can see, American and European control over the entire global economy. Because America and Europe control SWIFT, their central banks oversee SWIFT, that means that the U.S. and the EU can at any time cut off any nation they want from this platform, enabling international financial transactions. Now, given that that's true, given that we are seeing Western powers effectively weaponize SWIFT, we could certainly see, or at least surmise, why a number of non-Western nations are frankly getting very, very nervous over this. Given that the U.S. and the EU have now effectively weaponized international economic interdependence, more and more nations are asking, when are the U.S. and the EU going to be threatening our nation with these same kind of sanctions? And so this weaponization of the international banking system is causing nations like China, India, Pakistan, number of others to rethink their relationship to SWIFT and in turn entertain alternative economic systems, alternative monetary transaction platforms that will indeed create a very real worldwide alternative to the economic globalization overseen by Western powers. So this is precisely the way, or at least one of the major ways, in which we're seeing the liberal globalist order shattering. And it's already happening, by the way. We can see it right in front of our very eyes. China has an international payment system called KIPS. Again, it's an acronym for Cross-Border Interbank Payment System. Already upwards of 23 Russian banks are currently connected to KIPS. And Russia will have no trouble doing business with its number one trade partner, China, using this SWIFT alternative. So in other words, we're witnessing right before our very eyes, in real time, what does appear to be nothing less than the end of economic globalism. So with that as our background, we are now beginning to see those concerns by non-Western nations coming to fruition. Again, it bears repeating. The concern here is that while SWIFT is used by virtually every country in the world, it is controlled and weaponized by only a select few. So it's used by most every country in the world, but it's controlled by only some, namely the U.S. and the EU. And now we're seeing the weaponization of global finances extend beyond Russia. The latest target now is India. It's being widely reported that the Biden administration is indeed considering sanctioning India in response to India's purchasing of Russian military equipment. Now, you should know that's the reason the Biden administration is giving. What pundits are noticing is that this threat of sanctions comes just after India refused to vote in favor of Russian sanctions at the UN Security Council meeting this past week. India, along with China, United Arab Emirates, they abstained from the UN resolution sponsored by the United States that sought to condemn Russia's actions towards Ukraine. And of course, an abstention is basically the same thing as a veto. They're certainly not for the measure by any stretch of the imagination. Now, as to why India abstained, I mean, it's complicated. India, of course, has their own border issues, particularly with Kashmir, which is not a territorial issue limited to India and Pakistan. It also involves China. And India sees Russia as having tremendous influence over both Pakistan and China. The Prime Minister of Pakistan was on an official visit to Russia just as hostilities broke out in Ukraine last week. So geopolitically, India does need Russia's assistance in its own border dispute. So that may be the key reason. There are others, I'm sure. But of course, one of them must be this growing concern among non-Western nations, who, by the way, are approaching 80% of the world's population. This growing concern that the economic globalist engine that runs the world is controlled solely by Western powers who are now exploiting that control, weaponizing that control to manipulate nations for their own political benefit. The Biden regime apparently put tremendous pressure on India to vote in favor of the sanctions. And when they didn't, clearly Biden was disappointed, if not humiliated. And so the Assistant Secretary of State of South Asia has confirmed that the Biden administration is weighing whether to impose sanctions on India. Now, obviously, this is not going to play well in India. No nation likes to be pushed around, least of all the 1 billion populated nation of India. India has been going through a massive cultural renaissance over the last several years, led by the Hindu nationalist party known as the BJP, the Bharatiya Janata Party. They're headed by the very popular Prime Minister Narendra Modi. And as part of this cultural revival, Prime Minister Modi has actually publicly called for a new post-globalist world order a number of times. When he last spoke at the G20, he expressed his appreciation of some of the advantages of globalization, and yet he noted that the old globalist order simply couldn't meet the challenges of the world today. And so he called for a new economic order that will put human beings rather than economic targets or systems at the center of particularly the G20's vision for global prosperity. So I think the U.S. and the EU's threatening Modi with sanctions is not a very good idea, to say the least. The West has largely lost China. They've lost Pakistan. They've, to a certain extent, lost the United Arab Emirates. They lost Brazil. Bolsonaro has announced that they will not be condemning Russia. Argentina as well. Of course, they lost Venezuela. You combine that with losing Russia, I mean, you're beginning to see a very significant portion of the world's population ready to tell Western powers that they're just not going to be bullied in this anymore. So what's going to happen with India? I mean, we'll have to see. But again, like we've been saying ever since this whole thing started last week, what's happening in Ukraine goes way beyond Ukraine and Russia. The entire globalist order as we've known it is shattering right before our very eyes. And there's no question that threatening India with sanctions is not going to be putting that Humpty Dumpty globalist order back together again. Now, before you go, you will definitely want to check out my latest video I just uploaded this morning on how Russia is indeed building a parallel world. You're not going to want to miss it, so make sure to click on the link, and I will see you over there. God bless.